Van points angrily at Zeke, shouting that among everyone, he is the only one who can never be forgiven. Zeke, reclining without care, replies coldly that forgiveness means nothing since they are all going to be slaughtered here anyway. His expression hardens, and the scene echoes his vow that he will kill every last one of them right there. The mood shifts where Zeke glares at Van, calling him infuriating as ever. Not far from him, he is playing a video game and prepares for the final battle, declaring it's time to end it once and for all. The match escalates into shouts as attacks land, enemy cry out, and then triumph bursts forth when he finally wins. His joy is loud as he celebrates, one starting to say he has now completed everything, only for the moment to be interrupted by an unexpected ding that freezes him in surprise. The scene cuts to an opulent room, where silence hangs heavy as confusion surfaces with the question of what this place is. In between, a pair of hands cut food neatly with a knife and fork. At the dining table, his father scolds sharply, demanding to know why he is zoning out while food is laid out. He reminds sternly that time is not something that can be bought back with gold, while his mother adds firmly that being 12 years old means childish behavior must end. Zeke there looks across at them both, troubled by a strange familiarity that he is the villain. He realizes the game he was playing only moments ago somehow ties into this, and the final shock comes when it dawns on him that he has actually become Zeke Lagias. The narration flows back, describing the game Wish Soul, a famous RPG praised for its deep story and satisfying combat, as well as its colorful cast of characters, each full of personality and charm not only the hero but also many others. Yet amongst them all, one stands at the very bottom, the embodiment of evil, the final boss, Zeke Lagias. He is remembered for vile acts attacking the protagonist's family, kidnapping the heroine, twisting the Night Order into his army, obliterating a town and everyone in it, and more atrocities without end. The villain's reputation is clear, a cruel fiend without redemption, and now that very identity belongs to him. He wonders if this strange reality is reincarnation. He tests his body, noting it feels normal, though when he moves awkwardly and food fails and a maid walking away. He scolds her harshly, telling her to stop wasting time and clean up his mess, but instead of apology, words turn into insults that spill without his intent. Shocked, he realizes his attitude mirrors Zeke's exactly. It becomes clear to him that anything out of character is forcibly corrected, leaving no doubt that he is bound as Zeke Lagias. And he looks himself in the mirror and remarks there is no mistaking it, that is definitely Zeke Lagias. Raising his hand with determination, he admits he tries to resist, but ends up acting like the villain regardless. It feels as though the world itself is forcing him along Zeke's path, compelling him to live his life exactly. He knows the cruel truth of the game that no matter which route is taken, Zeke always meets the protagonist and always dies at his hands. The word, death, lingers over him as if fated. Still, another thought breaks through. Since Zeke eventually grows strong enough to become the final boss, perhaps he can use that power to actually defeat the protagonist instead. The idea excites him. Maybe he can defy this fate. He reassures himself that all he needs is practice, and with that, he shouts an affirmation that yes, there is a way forward. But reality strikes again when he collapses on the grass, sword at his side, while birds peck and attack her. He calls himself pathetic, thankful no one has seen such a shameful sight. He reflects that moving limbs in reality is nothing like pressing buttons in a game. And nearby, Maid murmurs curiously about Zeke's sudden decision to learn swordsmanship and dismiss it as the whims of nobility, while he secretly decides on the best instructor, Blink Hartman, a former Night Order Regiment commander, the only one worthy among the useless rest. His resolve hardens. To survive, he must grow stronger, and for that he needs Blink's training. Soon, in an ornate room, Blink stands before Lord Zeke, bowing respectfully. Zeke permits him to raise his head, and Blink introduces himself, stating that though the honor of being a personal instructor is great, circumstances prevent him from accepting. Blink reveals with a heavy heart that about a year ago, his son fell gravely ill. Since then, he has devoted himself entirely to his care, but recovery has been painfully slow. He explains further that his son's condition has only worsened, leaving him weak, unable to move, and suffering constant pain. That is why he left the Night Order, longing for more time with his child. And he explains this position, so close to home and with such short working hours, once seemed like a small blessing, allowing more time to be spent near the child. In the next moment, Zeke wonders aloud whether money can truly fail to solve something so dire. Blink insists that numerous physicians have already been consulted, each offering little more than the last. His voice falters as they describe how pain has left the boy unable to move, his body growing frailer with each passing day. Zeke listens intently, then demands more details, his words cutting like an order. Blink explains that though the boy had managed to converse and eat before, a few days ago his health collapsed. Now he cannot keep food down, breathing is agonizing, and his body grows weaker by the day. The situation leaves them desperate. At last, the truth is spoken. The only hope for a cure is the venom gland of a basilisk, a legendary poison dragon. Shock erupts at the mention of such a creature. Blink's voice trembles with frustration as he pleads against the idea of hunting a poison dragon, insisting that the danger far outweighs any hope of success. Zeke, however, remains unwavering. He challenges his resistance, demanding to know whether he truly believes he has the right to choose when so much is at stake. Blink's composure falters as he shouts back, describing the agony of his son who lies bedridden, the pain that grips at every small movement, the helplessness that deepens each day. Zeke tells if he fails, Blink will die, but if he does nothing, his son will die anyway. Between fear and resolve, the air grows still, holding the unspoken truth that both understand. The risk may be unbearable, yet the choice may already be made. The danger is immense, but Blink pleads with Zeke, begging him to save his son. The tension hangs as the harsh reality is stated. Doing nothing means certain death, but trying and failing may also lead to death. Still, Zeke declares coldly that they are to meet at the designated location in 3 days. The mountains of torque rise in the next scene, ominous symbols marking the path of danger. Blink questions when soldiers will arrive, but Zeke replies sharply, asking if he is dense. He explains that he would never waste soldiers for one child, and beyond that, his parents refuse to lend any. Blink reacts in shock, recalling he had assembled troops days ago, but he dismisses his assumption as nothing more than his own hopefulness. Together, they stand prepared to face the basilisk alone. Blink mutters that it borders on madness to face such a beast with only the two of them, but he refuses to be underestimated, saying he came with his own plan and resolve. His eyes shine with determination as he declares that he has figured out not only how to handle this, but also how he will survive in this world. He will use the knowledge from the game, knowledge only he possesses, and with it, he will defy his destiny. The tension culminates as the monster finally appears. A spiked monster towers over them, smoke and energy pouring from its body. The moment of reckoning has come. The forest falls silent, broken only by the sound of wind rushing through the trees. As the stillness lingers, the ground stirs with the grinding scrape of rocks. Suddenly, movement bursts forth as claws or spikes cut through the air, and Zeke gasps sharply in surprise, bracing himself against the violent action. Encouragement echoes across the field as a shield bearer urges Blink to keep pushing forward. Zeke, watching carefully, reflects that training under a skilled teacher has already sharpened his form beyond expectation. The rhythm of combat grows more intense until the man cries out that Zeke's pace is leading somewhere dangerous. The warning sharpens into urgency when he notices an imminent threat closing in from behind. A shout tears across the battlefield, followed by the sweeping arc of a blade. Zeke launches into his strike, executing a clean cross slash against his opponent on the grassy field. His eyes flare with determination as he declares that the basic technique has landed perfectly. Blink marvel, astonished that with only a handful of sessions he has already reached such a level of skill, though they admit he still lacks the strength to face a basilisk. The sound of impact crackles through the air as proof of progress, though doubts about readiness remain. In a quieter moment, Blink wonders aloud if placing trust in Zeke is even wise, calling the situation troubling. While admits that his talent with the sword is undeniable, far beyond an ordinary child, though his thoughts remain impossible to read. Questions rise about why he keeps slipping away alone. Meanwhile, his son's weakened body framed by whispered doubts about whether the antidote for his suffering is even real. And he thinks about his reputation of his family. He is the arrogant heir of the Lagias family who oppresses others. Elsewhere, he calls out desperately to Zeke, who kneels quietly, having vanished moments earlier. He brushes the concern aside, claiming he was merely occupied before calling Blink to readiness. The two of them regroup, standing among the trees. Then a new noise breaks the calm, and suspicion rises that the dreaded basilisk might be near. Shock follows its lair should be far ahead, yet Zeke admits to deliberately luring it closer with incense. Blink scolds him harshly for such recklessness, but he argues that drawing the beast out is less dangerous than walking into its nest. The ground trembles, and an explosion bursts across the distant field, Blink and Zeke bracing themselves as smoke clears. A monster with jagged teeth emerges, towering above. Blink rushes forward, insisting he will handle it and telling Zeke to stay back, but Zeke coldly orders him instead to hold his position upwind and not to move recklessly. As he falters in confusion, the basilisk shifts with cracking sounds, its massive presence bearing down. Zeke tightens his grip, but his hesitation lingers. Another blast erupts, scattering debris as Zeke shields himself against the force. The explanation follows swiftly. Hidden traps, magic mines that detonate under pressure set into place beforehand. Zeke identifies them as mere trinkets, cheap but more than enough to thin out such cannon fodder. Blink is stunned, demands to know how he could have prepared all of this alone, and more importantly, how he knew they would pass exactly through that spot. Zeke recalls that he has slaughtered countless basilisks in the game. The basilisk emerges from the haze at last. Confident, Zeke claims he knows this terrain and every predictable move. The monster claws its way forward with a guttural noise, but Zeke dismisses interference, ordering him to stay out of his way and simply keep watch. Blink clenches a sword in frustration yet obeys, convinced that in sheer combat skill they surpass Zeke, but in knowledge of the basilisk he is leagues ahead. Even so, promises are made that if danger reaches its peak, he will step in. The battle ignites. Zeke meets the basilisk head-on, mocking its predictable patterns and boring repetition. He steadies himself, declaring it is time to begin for real, and orders Blink back, warning him not to make the mistake of standing downwind. Blink demands clarification, but the answer never comes, only action. Poison breath floods the air as the basilisk unleashes its deadly mist, and Blink cries in fear. Blink watches the swirling vortex, his voice breaking in horror. Doubt spreads among him. Blink despairs that this cannot be happening, lamenting that he should have fought instead, apologizing to his son Luke and admitting his utter failure as a father. The ground shakes with splashing water, a strange shift in the battlefield. A wall of ice rises suddenly, shocking him all. Disbelief turns to awe as he realizes Zeke has conjured magic in that split second. He reveals the truth that he never claimed to lack magic, and in fact the original Zeke is a prodigious mage. By that inheritance, he wields powerful ice spells from the very start. He strikes, calling the basilisk a foolish lizard. Ice forms into a cross of blades as the attack is unleashed, tearing into the monster with the finishing move, an enhanced cross-slash merged with elemental force, Zeke's ultimate strike. The water-rich terrain amplifies his mana, boosting the spell until the strategy works flawlessly. Relief floods over him as he acknowledges victory. When the battle ends, Zeke asserts dominance, telling the survivor that from now on he serves under him. Shock ripples through those present, yet they bow and accept his authority. Whispers spread in disbelief, wondering who this boy truly is. The scene shifts once more to the mountainside. A cry warns that monsters are attacking, chaos breaking loose as barrels shatter and villagers flee, screaming to run. Amidst the destruction, a man lies crushed under debris, groaning weakly. He gazes toward a girl nearby and with fading strength mutters that it is all thanks to her. Another voice calls out in grief, damning Atri as a cursed and abominable child, the accusation cutting into the chaos as the chapter ends in turmoil. The scene shifts to the aftermath of the basilisk hunt, where a carriage lies broken in the street and people scatter in panic. Voices rise as they exclaim about a real basilisk being frozen solid, marveling at the unnatural power behind it. Rumors spread quickly, with some declaring that such a thing has never happened in guild history, while others debate if it was the work of a knight, before the truth settles that the feat belongs to Lord Zeke. Yet even as awe spreads, doubt follows. A man shouts that Lagias' demon child is behind it, and a man wonders if Lord Zeke truly has such strength. Disgust brews among some, calling the act cruel, while others mock the fickle nature of the crowd, noting how quickly they shift opinions and accuse him of poaching for profit. The whispers grow heavier as it becomes clear that no matter what he does, people twist his actions, leaving him to conclude that excuses are meaningless when his reputation is already tainted. Still, he finds resolve in the fact that these events bring him closer to ingredients for the cure. Blink companions acknowledge his progress, praising him openly, though Zeke scolds him lightly. Laughter follows as Zeke himself admits that the faster he improves, the faster others will become unnecessary, a sharp reminder of his determination. In another exchange, Gratitude surfaces when Blink thanks him, saying that his son Luke is recovering steadily. Zeke brushes it off coldly, though inwardly he notices only Blink's respect rising while the others remain indifferent. He focuses instead on avoiding the fate of a bad end, determined to keep this pace and sidestep the looming death flags, though his thoughts are interrupted by strange noises in the distance. The quiet is broken when prisoners behind bars plead desperately for help, claiming their village Alhai is under attack. Officials protest at the impropriety of a direct appeal, but the urgency in their voices draws attention. Zeke reacts sharply to the mention of magical beasts, his surprise quickly giving way to concern. The report grows clearer as another explains that the attackers are a pack of breeze, weasels, small creatures known for their deceptive agility. Though weak when faced alone, their danger lies in their numbers. The narration continues, emphasizing that while each strike lacks strength, the true threat comes when the creatures move in harmony. In the open plains where there is no cover, their coordination turns deadly. Yet the ruling lord scoffs at their plea, dismissing the poor village as unworthy of resources, and telling them to fend for themselves since they pay little tax. His cruelty earns bitter mutters from Zeke, who call him a scumbag and remind themselves that, unfortunately, he is still kin. Zeke, however, studies the situation carefully, reflecting that the Northern Plains never appeared in the game he once knew. So ignoring them should not cause problems, though the villagers keep begging for mercy, unable to return home without aid. Tensions rise further when men argue among themselves, only for Zeke to step forward boldly, declaring that he will go. He frames the task as an opportunity, promising to turn the pelts of the weasels into matching scarves and insisting that participation in a subjugation at his age will strengthen his reputation. Even then, he is warned to return quickly if danger rises, as suspicion lingers that this mission is little more than a stunt, and he remarks that the heir of the Lagias' name is at last showing some backbone. The silence stretches before his father finally concedes, agreeing to send a small group of soldiers to aid the mission. The words carry both warning and frustration, reminding the heir to handle the situation with care and to return at the first sign of danger. Despite the intention to appear supportive, the moment ends on a note of quiet exasperation, as Zeke laments how even his attempts to act kindly seem to only worsen their standing in the eyes of others. Clouds gather over the road as a wagon and a horse-drawn carriage roll steadily onward. Inside, Zeke questions why Luke is accompanying them. The boy introduces himself and expresses gratitude for his recovery, pleading for the chance to prove his worth. His determination feels suspicious to Zeke, who sensed something shifty in his presence, though Luke insists he only wishes to act as an attendant and someday become a knight, swearing that he will repay his debt to Lord Zeke. Zeke reflects quietly, recognizing that Luke never appeared in his memories of the game. He concludes that as long as he continues to grow stronger, deviations from the familiar storyline should not matter, even though reality drifts further from the game. With that, he allows Luke to do as he pleases, though unease lingers. Meanwhile, whispers spread among others. Luke claims that Zeke is incredible, echoing even from his father, while Blink says the common folk despise him. It is suggested that only by meeting him personally can the truth be seen. These words set the stage for Luke to seek the real Zeke beyond the jokes and the rumors. They arrives in Alhai village, where the chief is confronted directly about the attacks. Questions are raised about the normally docile breeze weasels and their sudden viciousness. The villagers hesitate, then whisper that the disasters are caused by the cursed child. They admit she has always been nearby whenever beasts grow wild. Nothing but misfortune has plagued them since the day she was born. Zeke asks about that child curiously. Memories resurface as they recount her origin. 12 years ago, a girl was born, considered strange but harmless at first. At the age of 5, the village storehouse suddenly caught fire, and though the cause was unknown, she was found asleep within the ruins, untouched by flames, claiming to remember nothing. From that moment, disaster after disaster struck. Crops failed, wells dried, homes collapsed, livestock died without cause, and even her parents perished suddenly, while beasts became unnaturally savage. Intrigued, Zeke calls her fate interesting and demands that she be brought forth to act as a guide. And when he reaches to see the girl while Atri is found chained and trembling, startled cries surround her as she is forced forward, her fear obvious. Harsh orders drive away the crowd until only he remains. Broken and apologetic, she kneels, Atri herself cursed, explaining that villagers shun her and that beasts only appear when she is alone. Tears follow as she blames herself for every calamity: her parents' death, the madness of monsters, the endless misfortune. She pleads for release, begging for the sword to end her life since no one else dares. Her misery is met with defiance. Zeke steps forward, dismissing the notion of curses, declaring that such superstitions are beneath him. He announces himself as the heir of Lagias, the so-called demon child, unafraid of fate or misfortune, and declares his purpose to slaughter beasts. The cart waits in silence while they stand in front of it. Zeke speaks harshly, telling the trembling girl to stop her crying, declaring that her only worth now is to serve as a guide to the attack site. Shock washes over her as she stammers in disbelief, unable to comprehend that she has been chosen for such a role. The rebuke grows sharper as she mocks her weakness, dismissing the idea of a curse and scoffing at the thought that something so trivial could ever harm one known as the demon child of Lagias. The insults continue, piercing deeper as her appearance is ridiculed, her unwashed face and ragged clothes called unbearable to look at. She is ordered to wash away the grime and find garments more fitting, whispers she, watching from afar, thinks of Zeke repeating to herself that he is the demon child. Her unease lingers, while the scene shifts to the vast northern plains. Under the cover of night, the open land stretches endlessly. Amid the tall grass, glowing eyes begin to emerge. A guttural cry bursts out suddenly, high and sharp, as one of the beasts opens its mouth, bearing rows of sharp teeth in the moonlit field. Soldiers gather with wagons, preparing for the extermination, though many scoff at the mission, calling it a waste of effort over mere breeze weasels. Luke mocks the very idea of the so-called demon child of Lagias, noted that Lagias soldiers remain weak, their morale low and their training poor. Amidst the crowd, fear surfaces when whispers spread that the cursed child is present. Warnings are shouted to avoid her gaze, branding her as taboo, while others dismiss such claims as nothing more than the superstition of a backwards village. Still, suspicion lingers as people mutter that every misfortune in the region is pinned upon her. Attention quickly shifts when Lord Zeke demands to know if the entire troop has assembled. The girl is forced forward, named as their guide into beast territory. Gasps ripple among the armored men, questioning the use of a child in such a dangerous role, fearing she will be used as bait. The wagons creak onward through a wooded path. Inside, hushed voices recall the girl they call the taboo child, though they admit the accusations against her are baseless. They list the tragedies her parents, sudden deaths, as nothing more than an accident, crop failures caused by repeated planting, and a well that dried up when the groundwater shifted. None of it, they insist, has any true connection to Atri, though doubt lingers in quiet thoughts. Something about the situation simply does not sit right. Atri gestures to a place along the path, saying this is where the breeze weasels first attacked. The land stretches wide into an ordinary plain, but suddenly a gust of wind sweeps across, fierce and unnatural. Panic rises as orders are shouted for everyone to drop to the ground, the words laced with alarm: "This is wind magic." A horse roasts violently, whinnying in distress, while chaos grows as Luke in wagon tumbles down in a sudden fall. At the same time, the girl sprints forward as Blink struggles to carry her through the turmoil. Lord Zeke cuts through the noise, berating his soldiers as pathetic and ordering immediate battle formation. He demands that the injured and non-combatants be protected at all costs. His orders are met with hurried responses, though shrieks of fear still rise among the untrained troops. Soldiers shout in horror, realizing they are completely surrounded. Panic spreads further as they see just how many beasts there are, some shouting helplessly about what they can possibly do against such numbers. Yet Zeke scoffs at their fear, mocking them for whining and reminding them that the enemies are still just weasels, no matter their numbers. Battle erupts as steel clashes with fur. Zeke slashes at a beast while Blink rallies the troops, shouting that they must not falter since the monsters are weak despite their numbers. Encouragement surges, and the armored fighters answer with renewed determination, crying out to Blink that they are ready to fight. The fight turns fierce across the grassy plain. Beasts leap, but soldiers counter, shouting that the creatures are not strong at all and can be wiped out easily. Boasts rise in confidence, though one cautious voice reminds them that something feels off. Zeke and a Blink stand apart, watching keenly. He remarks that even a fool could sense the strangeness, noting the sheer number of beasts. Their movements, he observes, are too coordinated, suggesting the area may have turned into a breeding ground. The thought chills the air, for such a place is no mere hunting ground but closer to an overworld dungeon where swarms of monsters live and breed together. Blink admits nervously that this may already be beyond what they can handle, while Zeke reacts in shock. Further ahead, Zeke holds his sword ready, his expression grim. Mana flows heavily through the area, pressing against all senses. The wagons move along the winding path, his breath sharp with dread at the thought of what is to come. Luke reassured Atri their father and soldiers are present to protect them, only to cry out in horror as one of the men falls under attack. Shouts warn of enemy magic as small beasts circle, swirling in violent bursts. A horse crashes violently to the ground, drawing screams from onlookers. Shock turns to despair as Atri, crying that everything is her fault. She calls herself the Cursed One, the taboo child, regretting bitterly that she ever left her shack. Her anguish deepens as she grips herself, lamenting that she should never have broken her chains nor believed the words that gave her hope. She sobs apologies, begging forgiveness for ever coming with them, her voice breaking with despair. Above the chaos, more monsters gather. The sheer number is unnatural, and whispers return again to the cursed child. Suddenly, the beasts halt their advance, leaving soldiers tense and wary. Observations follow quickly. Luke and Atri note how the monsters are synchronizing their mana, amplifying it together in unison. The realization strikes this is advanced magic, and the technique forms an air bullet. Cries of shock spread as the beasts prepare to unleash it. Savage Monsters bares its teeth and panic ripples when Atri and Luke stumble, falling as the horse bolts into the night. The battle rages further as wagons overturn, debris scattering violently while people crouch low to defend themselves, and one Atri looks up in silence, confusion flickering in her eyes. The unison link of the beasts takes shape, a feat once thought impossible for common monsters, leaving observers surprised. Yet in the chaos, resolve hardens as Lord Zeke steps forward, vowing to show these beasts exactly who the prey is in this hunt. Frost suddenly flashes across the battlefield. Soldiers and onlookers stare wide-eyed, whispering in disbelief that the magic must be ice, wondering if it came from Lord Zeke himself. In the aftermath, the frozen field is littered with defeated monsters. Relief rises as army claim the spell has wiped out nearly all of them, victory seeming close. Their cheers break suddenly when the ground trembles with the force of an earthquake. The realization dawns grimly if this follows the pattern of the usual game system. Then breeding grounds always harbor one last threat. And then it appears, vast and overwhelming, a boss monster, towering above all others. A monster bears its jagged teeth motion. It becomes clear that this place is no ordinary field but a breeding ground, a colony where magical beasts gather in overwhelming numbers. Zeke narrows his gaze, his thoughts sharpened by grim certainty such a place inevitably summons a massive boss to appear. The armored knights falter at the sight of the looming threat. One curses under his breath, while another admits openly that an enemy of such magnitude is beyond their strength. Panic runs deeper as they recall the coordinated attack the beasts used earlier. If that power is unleashed again, they know their end is certain. Observations echo through the ranks as the technique is named a fusion of mana synchronized across multiple users to form a far stronger attack than any single one could wield. It is a method thought impossible for mere beasts, yet here they wield it with frightening precision. The realization chills the soldiers, and before they can process it, a warning cry spreads as another attack begins to form. The earth quakes as mana gathers. Debris and rocks explode into the air, filling the battlefield with a deafening roar. Among the wreckage, some soldiers tumbles, caught helplessly in the blast. Soldiers look on in horror as the ice wall meant to protect them begins to shatter. Luke admits grimly that survival now depends on fleeing. Their retreat is interrupted by a harsh command that cuts through the fear, denouncing them as worthless grunts and ordering silence. Lord Zeke steps forward, refusing to let panic take root, and reminds them all of who he truly is. Zeke Lagias, the demon child of Lagias, raises his sword, declaring his resolve before the stunned knights. Doubts still hang over Luke, who mutter anxiously about the strength of the beasts, the boss, and the terrifying unison link. Yet Zeke remains firm, accepting the weight of the danger, but insisting that he still has his own power to bring forth. He lifts his weapon and calls out to the foe, mocking the boss monster for their performance and declaring it his turn. The battlefield stills as he summons his magic, an ice shot that pierces forward with sudden brilliance. Gasps of awe ripple among the soldiers as they witness the spell, some marveling aloud that it is Lord Zeke's magic. while others admit they never knew he held such skill. Beasts roar, charging forward with guttural cries that shake the grasslands. Zeke headlong, teeth bared, as a warrior flees desperately from its fury. Atri whispers nervously that the monster is enraged. Zeke grips his sword with fierce determination, reminding that this is survival and there is no room for mercy. The clash intensifies as Lord Zeke casts an icicle lance, a massive spear of ice that streaks through the air. Soldiers cry out in shock at its size, unable to believe it can be dodged. Some despair, thinking the battle already lost or won in that single instant, their voices filled with desperate hope and fear. But the attack is not the end. Three beasts suddenly synchronize their mana once more, activating another unison link. Their energy surges into advanced wind magic, coalescing into a raging spell known as Delta Storm. The winds howl violently, twisting across the battlefield in a storm of destruction. Yet against this power, Zeke's sword rises, its wielder cutting through with precise force. Luke exclaim in shock as the deadly spell is neutralized before their eyes, their disbelief echoing as debris settles. The relief is short-lived. A warning spreads that the beast's mana has not faded, and a voice commands the final spell, all creation freeze. Frost spreads across the land as a sharp cry calls the attack's name, Icicle Ray. Blinding light flashes, colliding with beasts and tearing through the storm. The monsters shatter, fragments scattering in silence. The onlookers stare wide-eyed at the overwhelming force. Explosions rattle the ground while smoke and sparks consume the air. Some whisper in awe, stunned that this is no ordinary mage, but the demon child of Lagias himself. Strategic precision becomes evident. Zeke predicts the delay in unison link casting, baiting the beasts with mid-level spells, then unleashing wide-area annihilation magic at the exact moment they are trapped. The brilliance of the maneuver stuns the watchers, who whisper about his cold precision, his intuition, and the terrifying power he wields. Soldiers murmur in unease, realizing at last what kind of being stands before them. They call him the demon child of Lagias with both fear and awe, while Zeke orders the grunts to move out, insisting the show is over. Yet in hushed tones, some can only mutter one word: a demon. The scene shifts back to the village, where relief fills the people. They bow gratefully to Zeke, proclaiming their debt and offering their deepest thanks. Still, whispers trail behind them, some calling him the demon of ice, frightening and unnatural. Zeke walks on in silence, hearing their mutterings but dismissing them as the expected reaction to a villain, and announces that it is time to leave, and they turn from the village together. Yet behind them, Atri pleads desperately for forgiveness, asking that Zeke not hold the fearful people's words against them, not after all he has done. Zeke ignores their cries, raising his head and declaring calmly that he does not concern himself with the chatter of peasants. He asserts quietly that no matter what others may call him, he remains who he is, and she is suddenly grabbed, her body jolting in surprise as Lord Zeke urges her to stop looking down, to lift her eyes and move forward instead. She lifts her gaze as he leaps overhead. Curious whispers stir among the soldiers watching from a distance, wondering what the cursed child is discussing with the ice demon and remarking cautiously that she may be his favorite. Warnings spread quickly, reminding them to tread carefully around her, for if they misstep, the ice demon himself might return for vengeance. The girl steadies herself as she is told again to look forward, her movements hesitant yet slowly firming. She mutters softly that she will one day become strong just like him. Around her, wagons creak as the sound of travel continues. Elsewhere, Luke praising the so-called future lord, while realizes bitterly that the earlier commotion was merely an act. Frustration lingers as Zeke laments wasted time on an event never meant to be part of the story, worrying about how such changes will affect the plotline of the world he knows. His expression grows tense as he recalls that if the game's events run too close to their intended path, Zeke's fate will remain unchanged. Death still awaits him. Meanwhile, Zeke reflects alone on his own weakness, admitting grimly that his swordsmanship and magic as they are now leave her destined for death. He knows only real combat experience can save him, not faith in whether events match the game or not. His grip tightens on his weapon as he vows to gain strength no matter the cost, determined to grow and survive. For a brief moment, her gaze drifts to the thought of Van, the protagonist, wondering what he is doing now. Far away, wagons continue their slow travel across the path. As they near a village, tension stirs when a swordsman is ordered to put away his blade, only for him to refuse, declaring it an extension of his soul. He justifies his defiance by insisting that he is a swordsman first and always. And then, amidst the clamor of travel, the narration turns to a single name: Van, the protagonist of Wish Soul, the future hero. Lord Zeke reflects that once he had been nothing more than an average high schooler obsessed with the game Wish Soul. Yet in the blink of an eye, his reality changed. He awoke reincarnated as none other than the game's primary villain, Zeke Lagias. With that identity comes a dreadful fate, destined to be killed by the heroes. But rather than surrender to this death flag, he vows instead to overturn it, determined to aim for the very top. Time passes. His strength grows so rapidly that his own weapons can no longer withstand the power of his magic. While he contemplates this, a familiar voice calls out his name. Zeke's gaze then shifts toward his father, only for excitement to ripple through the household as news breaks. A dungeon has been discovered within their very own territory. The truth is soon revealed. Dungeons hide ancient weapons and magical items long lost to the world above, treasures beyond measure. To Zeke's mind, such a place is a goldmine. Shocked voices cry out at the revelation, wondering if this could truly be the Lagias dungeon, the very same that appears near the endgame of Wish Soul. Within that labyrinth lies the legendary blade, the Ice God Sword. Zeke considers the possibilities. That sword is said to be capable of channeling his overwhelming magic without breaking. To him, it represents not just a weapon, but a means of growth, a ticket to becoming even stronger. Yet obstacles remain. By law, the Kingdom's survey team must be the first to explore the dungeon. He grumbles at the protocol, dismissing it as government red tape, but soon learns the team has already arrived. They introduce themselves, formally Glance Folt, the survey team commander. Alongside him stand the Knight Mia and the magician Marks, each skilled veterans in their own right. Rumors swirl about Glance, who is said to advise the Magicians Guild itself, while his companions, magician and knight alike, are praised as reliable and seasoned professionals. Their reputations precede them. Recognition strikes. Zeke realizes with dread that Glance is no ordinary sage, but one of the hero's own party members within the game. In the original story, he had been the leader of the first survey team into the Lagias dungeon, a man of integrity and discipline. Yet the tale had ended in disaster. The survey team is fated to be annihilated, their failure becoming the incident that launches the game's main storyline. Zeke recalls the consequences. Glance shoulders the blame, vanishing into seclusion, while House Lagias never ceases to hound him for the failure. That fracture drives a wedge between their family and the heroes, sparking future conflict and marking yet another of Zeke's many death flags. The realization weighs on him this incident, too, is bound to his eventual downfall. Determined, he makes a choice. His father listens with surprise as Zeke insists on joining the survey. Gasps ripple through the room, and though objections are raised about the brutality of dungeon expeditions, manpower is scarce. Laughter follows, yet Zeke presses on, justifying his place in the team with cold logic. If no one is watching, treasure can vanish into greedy hands. He insists he needs no escort, declaring instead that he intends to claim a proper sword for himself. The declaration earns recognition. His father remarks that he has already awakened to his duties as the next lord. With that, the decision is made: Zeke will accompany the survey team. 2 objectives are set in stone. The first, to claim the Ice God Sword. The second, to ensure the survival of the survey team, crushing the death flag before it takes root. The expedition begins. The party enters Ansley Forest dungeon, deep in the Lagias domain. Already tensions flare as Zeke asserts his authority, ordering that no one move without his command and warning that mistakes will cost lives. The sage mutters reluctantly that these are the Lord's orders, and though frustrated, they tolerate the Lord's overbearing presence. Exploration leads them to a dead end. Zeke scoffs at the sight, calling it pathetic, and demands a search. With a command, Magician reveals a will-o-wisp, exposing hidden mechanisms. His confidence only grows as they uncover ancient structures and what seems to be an altar. He speculates the dungeon may not even be deep, but Zeke warns against carelessness, chastising amateurs who rush to touch unfamiliar relics. Their journey continues through trap-ridden corridors. The scene unfolds within the depths of an ancient dungeon, where sudden energy flares distort the air and form a warp zone before them. As the group examines their surroundings, the ruins reveal traces of a long-lost prehistoric civilization. Sage Glance explains that, judging from the structure and construction methods, particularly the design of the walls, the dungeon likely originates from that distant era. Ordinary detection magic, they continue, proves ineffective here since mechanisms from this age respond only to specific magical wavelengths, a fact that seems almost too simple for anyone experienced to overlook. His words carry a hint of arrogance as he warns the others to remember this lesson, implying that only amateurs would fail to notice such details. The command follows swiftly, ordering a slower companion to remain behind and not become a burden. Moments later, tension rises again when Knight mutters bitterly about another's luck in stumbling upon a warp zone by chance, accusing him of acting overly confident. The others begin to question the one leading them, Zeke Lagias, wondering how he possesses such precise knowledge of this ancient place and what exactly he might be hiding. Before any answer can form, sound of a spell breaks the air as one of them unleashes an ice attack, shards of frost bursting forward into the mist-filled corridor. He disarms mechanisms that should require 3 people, rearranges complex stones with flawless precision, and sidesteps traps designed to crush intruders. Observers whisper in awe and confusion. His movements resemble those of someone intimately familiar with the dungeon, yet the truth is far harsher. He pushes his body far beyond its limits, burning through stamina and barely able to stand. Others notice the contradictions. He keeps his guard up, takes point at all times, yet speaks harshly to maintain distance from the others. This mixture of arrogance and precision unsettles them, forcing whispers of suspicion. The Knight Mia holds her focus unwaveringly, always battle-ready. The magician Mark sustains detection spells endlessly without fatigue. Glance maintains calm mana flow with absolute discipline. Their strength is undeniable, yet Zeke wonders how such a team could ever have been wiped out in the game's events. Something feels wrong. Despite their progress, not a single monster has appeared. Even accounting for his trap work, the absence of enemies makes no sense. In the game, the Lagias dungeon had teemed with deadly foes. Anxiety prickles at his thoughts. Perhaps he has already stepped straight into a death trap. A sudden shock halts them. Before their eyes, resting upon a stone platform, lies the fabled ice god sword. Yet the sight triggers unease. The mana radiating from the blade feels wrong, heavy with unnatural force. He senses danger, realizing it may be more than it appears. A warning is shouted not to touch it. Tension breaks as Zeke moves forward recklessly, his sword shattering in an instant under the strain of unleashed power. Zeke's identity is spoken aloud by Sage, who realizes he has been trying to shield them all along. Confusion swirls. Then a terrible presence emerges. The ruins shake, structures collapse, and a circle etched into the floor breaks apart with violent force. From the rubble rises a towering form, an archdemon, horned and monstrous, its body radiating ruinous magic.